Deuteronomy 25, just weights and measures. This is going to be fun for me because I have some background in this. So,
Wait, which job?
the MAI.
What's an MAI? Okay, it isn't medical action.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, medical action. I worked at a medical packaging facility for almost 18 years. It was like 2 months shy. Month and a half, 2 months shy, something like that. Anyhow, so let's start with a prayer. I think that you're starting them.
I think I did yesterday's.
That sounds right. Okay. Itchy nose. I hate itchy noses.
I agree with that statement.
Our Father in heaven, we thank you very much for all that we have been able to do. We thank you for the good night's sleep that we've had and that we have slept well. We ask that you please help us to have success with our house listing and help us to get this move done quickly. Please bless us with peace as we do this. We thank you for this chance to read thy word, and we ask you to please help us to continue on with sharing and learning thy word. And please bless those that hear this, that they will be able to learn and grow and understand better for themselves. We say these things and do so humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Chapter 25. Judges prescribe punishment for the wicked, of course. Hopefully they judge righteous judgment.
Whenever you said prescribe, my brain thought of a pharmacy.
Well, it is a prescription.
True.
You know, it's you are going to be punished for this long because of this
Action.
Yeah, I was trying to find the right word. That's a good way to put it. So, hopefully, yeah, we need a better judicial system than the one that we have, which is for profit. We need one that teaches people to how to get out of the generational curse, or to not create a generational curse if they're the first people just being rebellious little. The marriage law provides for a brother's widow. Just weights and measures are required, which is a really cool one to go into.
Especially since that's how they would measure payments.
Yeah, especially. And Israel is commanded to blot out the Amalekites from under heaven. Yay.
Well, so blot them out. Do we have a giant paintbrush?
Yeah, we're just going to paint them all black and then leave them, you know.
Yeah, the sun will eventually melt them, right?
We'll turn them into wax.
If you paint somebody jet black, that would be very hot to just keep on. Isn't that like tar?
If you did tar, that would be horrible because you have to heat up tar enough to actually get it to flow.
Ugh.
Yeah, and that's at or above the boiling point of water. I'd have to check that number.
Ouch!
Yeah, that's why getting tarred and feathered was a horrible, horrible thing. Because not only did you get burned by all the tar getting spread on you, the feathers would then prick into your skin and create open wounds, therefore possibly causing death if you didn't get it. Or, just itchy because
Infection.
you got... Yeah.
And then, of course, the shame of even being like that.
Yeah. Start us off.
If there be a controversy between men, and they come unto judgment, that the judges may judge them, then they shall justify the righteous, and condemn the wicked.
So, if there's a disputation, a conflict, dispute, that can be difficult to do, though. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes both parties are right. How do you work that out? But, if the wicked... And it shall be if the wicked man be worthy to be beaten. Beaten? Really? Beaten with a few stripes. Okay, if he's being a jerk. Then that the judge shall cause him to lie down and to be beaten before his face, according to his fault, by a certain number. So
sounds like a spanking.
Number of stripes. Hopefully they didn't use bamboo, because that could cause some severe skin loss. But, whipped, club, it depends on what was that word that we had a few times ago, the amorti or something like that.
Amity?
Something like that, where a person is given a charge, a cost for, and it's a judge prescribed cost for a thing. This one was about his wife. If he didn't like his wife,
He had to
then
pay his wife.
he'd pay his wife's father. But, he would be given this is just another payment for having done something wrong.
40 stripes he may give him, and not exceed, lest if he should exceed and beat him above these with many stripes, then thy brother should seem vile unto thee.
Degraded.
Thou shalt not muzzle the ox when he treadeth out the corn.
Think about that. Your
Muzzle as in cover up the eyes, or
mouth.
Oh,
A muzzle is something to keep a dog from barking or something else from. Yeah. So if an ox is being, they would typically build a threshing floor. That's what it's called, in a circle, and then they would tie the ox to a beam, and they would have a heavy, almost mill wheel size stone to pull around the threshing floor. And if an ox is sitting there going, oh, this is food, I'd like to have some, I can't eat anything because my mouth is covered. It's torture. It's mean. Because they're sitting right there with food in front of their faces, and you're saying, you ain't getting this food.
If brethren dwell together, and one of them die, and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her.
Take her to him. You said that a little wrong. I'm not gonna change
I'm
it.
confused about how I said that.
It was something about take him to wife or something like that. I just
Whoops.
yeah. Anyhow, so don't marry outside the family. The brother has a child with this wife so that the child will be the son of the husband. Which,
A little weird, but okay.
yeah, it's the way they did things back then, because it was so common to have a man die. And let's just hope that she could handle living with the man. Because sometimes you have a really nice guy and he marries a person, and then the brother comes along and he's not nice.
Yeah.
And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother, and that's why, which is dead, that his name not be put out of Israel.
And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders, and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up his brother's name, a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother.
Put out or blotted out. The footnote on put, so that he doesn't disappear
From history.
Right. That's interesting. And she can say, dude, he ain't getting me pregnant. I'm not sure that I would really want to do that, but hey.
That could go in a bad way.
Yes, it could. But this is their time. We're not judging their time on our
Modern standards.
Right, because this was their time. And honestly, the normal age of death, the what's the name? Mortality age, whatever, was in the 30s, and it wasn't.
Which is why people would often get married, like either before or just as they're becoming teenagers.
Well, no, they would. It was still common to get married above 16, but it was not uncommon to be married 18 or 19. So
yeah, just as or after they were
towards the end of being a teenager. But
okay.
that's a different story. But either way, it was not uncommon to have a person through an accident, through just a poke in the skin, and they didn't clean it properly, or war, which did happen back then, to not survive. So then the elders of his city shall call him and speak unto him, and if he stand to it and say, I like not to take her,
then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders, and loose his shoes from off his foot, and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, so shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house.
Wow, that's
so
mean.
They would take their shoe and smack him with it, then spit on his face? Is that what I'm getting? I'm confused.
I'm not sure about hitting him with the shoe, but spitting in his face was something that made a person unclean. So it's not just physically unclean because you have to wash the junk off your face, but it's spiritually or religiously unclean, temple worthy unclean. This is putting a man down a couple of notches, because you can't do certain things if you are unclean. Ceremonially unclean. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loosed.
Wow.
Beware of this man. He made bad decision.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, that's mean. When men strive together one with another, and the wife of one draweth near for to deliver her husband out of the hand of him that smiteth him, pronouns, and putteth forth her hand, and take him by the secrets. Then thou shalt cut off her hand, thine eye shall not pity her. Ooh.
Wait, what?
So if a woman walks up and goes, boom, leave my husband alone, slams him in the groin, or
she could get in trouble.
Yeah, because that's still, husband and wife only should be ever touching the private areas.
Makes sense.
So this is a little bit beyond normal, but I can sort of understand a woman hitting, but at the same time, this is saying grab and pull him away. That can be bad. So I'm not going to say more than that, but that does seem like something that would take some really wanting to try to pull off.
Yeah, this has many question marks for me.
Yeah, and so cut off her hand. You don't pity her, and that, honestly, if a woman really grabs hold and pulls, that not only takes getting
private
into
area.
Well, think about how sensitive it is, but if you get far enough into the fight that you have the access to a groin, that takes some doing. That takes getting into the fight. So yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Okay, so my brain was thinking that she was grabbing him by the shoulders and just pulling him away.
No, she's grabbing him by the groin and pulling his privates.
What if she kicks him?
This doesn't say kick. This is handling, because you're cutting off the hand. If she kicks him, knee him in the groin, I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, because that still slows him down. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, thou shalt not have in thy bag diverse weights, or two kinds of weights. That's interesting. I've never thought of it that way. Just balances, just weights. A great and a small. Thou shalt not have in thine house diverse measures, a great and a small. So this is what I actually have personal experience with. In our modern day, we have actual legal requirements. And another fun thing about that is the way that the standard was changed. Let me go to that second. But there is typically in every state in the U.S. the Department of Agriculture and Commerce, something along those lines, where they actually have a standard that is based off of the standard of the United States, which is based off the standard of the world. And these standards were put into place around the time the metric system was put in place, something like that. And there's a whole story to that. Go look up the history guy. He's got a few things about it, and there's some other things you can look up. But that's the next part. So they say this is our base measurement, and it compares to this, and therefore it compares to this, and they actually verify that everything is based on the previous one, and it's supposed to be goodness, why am I burping? Extremely accurate. I'm fine. Just got surprised by that one. And by having that, they can. I'm gonna have to take a picture. Oh dear. they can say this pump, this scale, this whatever it may be is accurate, and you are legally allowed to make sales, make purchases, the whole 9 yards of all that based on volumes and weights and so forth, distances. And that is how we run our lives reasonably these days. A few years ago, I want to say it was somewhere between 2010 and 2015, the world nations actually brought together all of their standard weights, and they had changed due to handling, due to,
Oh
whatever
yeah, I
it may
remember you
be.
telling me the story.
Right, and I think Veritasium, Smarter Every Day, maybe some other guys have done videos about they decided to base the measurement of weight on the current understanding of gravitational fields and some other stuff like that.
And over time, because of use, they deteriorated and
Right, and so
lost some weight.
one weighed a full kilogram, I think was what the base weight was, and some of them were somewhere between 10 and 50% different. It was crazy because of handling and all of the other things.
Atmospheric pressures. Because
Maybe, yeah, elevations and things.
Yeah.
Who knows exactly? But it was really fascinating to see that we can't even trust things that have been a standard, because just by handling them, you rub a little bit off every time. Or
it's sort of like whenever
Add
you
to
buy
it.
a new car, and as soon as you take it off the lot, it depreciates in
right,
value.
Right. And it's not quite the same, but it's...
That's an instant thing.
Yes. These weights have been the standard. I mean, the metric system was put in place late 1800s.
I think so.
It's been well over 100 years that these things have been used, and they get handled, they get polished, and they've just changed. So they had to go back to the beginning and say, well, what was our original standard, and how are we now going to move forward? I mean, the meter, which is the distance of length, and I'm not sure how volume gets in. Volume is somehow measured off of the meter, I think, cubic centimeters and stuff. But the meter was based on a specific fraction of the distance around the Earth, and I don't remember how they decided on that one. But anyhow, long story short, let's cut back to this. When I was working the last few years at the medical packaging facility, which is now bought by someone else, and I think they might be trying to sell it to somebody else again. I was required to go around with a person from a scale company every 3 months and check all of the scales in the building, and there were 18, I think.
To make sure that they were still accurate.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And if you go to a store or to a gas station or something like that, you can ask to see the calibration label that says when the last time that scale was calibrated, so that you can say how you can see that it is still legally accurate. And if you can't see that, one time I went to, we had a couple of cars blow up. I mean, we wore out the engines.
Our cars?
Yeah, one of them was an engine, one of them was transmission.
All right.
It was a Dodge, transmissions. But we went to the junkyard, and I said, where's your calibration thing? And they pointed to a wall where they had this thing stapled to the wall. And it said this was calibrated on this date, and I was able to say, hey, you're still legal, and I'm happy with that. If you go somewhere and you're wondering if it's legal, ask them to see their calibration sticker or their calibration
I
printout.
need to remember that.
Yes, because if they can't produce that, then you can question what they're doing for legality. But all of this comes back to, we need to be honest in our dealings, because if you have a large and a small weight, and your friends get the small weight and your not friends get the large weight, or vice versa, depending on how it goes, then you're being dishonest to one of those groups of people, or both of them. You're letting people cheat, or you're cheating other people. So, 15, go for it.
But thou shalt have a perfect and just weight, a perfect and just measure shalt thou have, that thy days may be lengthened in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee.
And think about it. If you find out that someone's stealing from you, you're not going to be happy with them, and you're going to be willing to give them a beat down and
Joseph
other stuff.
in the Coat of Many Colors, there's a point where Potiphar is buying a horse and the scale is off. And the guy is trying to get him to spend more money on said horse. And because Potiphar, through Joseph, finds out that the guy lied and that the scale is broken, the guy gets sold into slavery as punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, 16.
Okay, before we do that, there was a story that I read when I was in school. It was in one of our reading books about this guy in Russia who didn't trust the local grocer. And I mean...
Oh, yeah, this one.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned this one before.
Yeah, I've told you about it before.
I mean, you mentioned it in the readings.
Oh, anyhow, I don't remember.
It's okay to reiterate this one.
This boy, I think it was the grandfather of the person that told the story, did not trust the grocer, and he tried to figure out a way to ask the grocer what was honest and what wasn't. And one day he went there and got a pound of coffee in a package, and I don't remember what happened, but for whatever reason, the grocer went out back, and the boy took the pound of coffee and the 1 pound weight, and he put them on the scale that was on the counter, and it wasn't even. And so the little boy put 3 pebbles on the scale, and it came to balance, and then he justified himself in saying, you owe me X amount of money because your scales are not right because of that. And to an extent, that is a moderate thing to be worried about. But, you know, there's several factors here that are not being taken into account. Number one, like I just said, you handle something a lot and it changes the weight of it. And especially if they would handle it every day and then clean it off, you're always losing something when you clean stuff off. Even if it's just a dry cloth, you're scraping material off of it. The other part is, if the package of coffee was there, you have the net and the gross. The net is the coffee itself. The gross is the coffee plus the package. And there are manufacturing tolerances. The coffee may have been more or less in the bag by 1 or 2% or less, depending on how good the manufacturing was. So how many different factors did he not take into account? And because he was just an untrusting person, didn't trust this grocer may have been the most trustworthy and honest person, but this grandfather had decided to hate them. And it makes capitalism look bad all across the board when you read something like this, because the end line of the story is, don't trust people who are selling things. I'm sorry, but there comes a point where you just simply have to say, where is honesty being placed, and faith in general? And it's just sad, because that's what we're talking about here. Don't be blatantly
dishonest. Try to be as honest as you physically can.
Right. And some people do their best and still have problems. Some people, maybe like the grocer in that story, are honestly trying, and they just simply, we would have to send our weights off every 2 years to get calibrated, where they would physically remove a plug and then check all the weights and put stuff in or out of the scale, the weights that we used, because there is a plug in a calibratable weight, and you can put more or less lead into the weight, and then you put the plug back on and you seal it down, and that is now legal. This person may not have ever gotten the weights calibrated. You know, who knows how far away they were from the ability to do that. So, long story about being an honest person and how to be an honest person. So let's move on. 16, are we?
Yeah.
For all that do such things and all that do unrighteously are an abomination to the Lord thy God. If you steal, it's bad.
And if you're being dishonest in purpose, it's also bad.
That's what it is. If it's literal stealing and purposeful manipulation, then it's horrible, and that is an abomination.
Remember what
Amalek,
did unto thee by the way when ye were come forth out of Egypt.
How he met thee by the way and smote the hindmost of thee. Ooh, he came you from the back. That's rude.
Bing!
Well, no. Let me finish this.
Okay.
Even all that were feeble behind thee, and when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. That is rude. You always have the leaders, the people in the front of a train of people, be the strongest, so that when someone comes to you from the front, which is the honest and decent thing to do when you're trying to beat someone, they will meet your strongest forces. These people came in from the back, and all of the old and weak and sickly were the ones that they killed off first. Or at least, you know, I'm not sure how this went. Attacked you. It doesn't give that, but they were very, very rude about how they attacked. Even if they had attacked from the side, so that, you know, it would still have been a moderately decent battle.
For a battle.
Fair, yeah.
It's in a sense, guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, this is just mean. You're attacking the weakest people so that you can wipe them all out, and then you have longer before you actually have to start fighting. That's rude.
Yeah.
Therefore
it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest from all thine enemies round about, in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heavens. Thou shalt not forget it.
Yeah. So wipe those puppies out.
Delete.
Yes. That, for as much as it's not nice to do genocide in this case, it's a wickedness passed on to generations, I guess. So yeah. That's just sad. So, all right. A lot of talk about being an honest person, and a lot of talk about taking care of a family, and a little bit of a talk about getting rid of jerks who unfortunately might be still teaching their children to hate on the Israelites. I'm not sure that they did, though. I want to say that I know that there's somewhere where Joshua accepts a offering of peace, and then he finds out that they're neighbors. And he's like, oh, crap, we just screwed up. But, yeah, it was a bit of conniving and lying.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so we will talk more tomorrow. Go into the first fruits of Canaan. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, and we will see you guys then. Bye-bye.
Bye.